is the COO and co-founder of Gridless Compute. Please welcome the amazing Janet Maingi. Here she is. The stage is yours, Janet.
Good morning. Finally, we are there. So I'm Janet Maingi, Gridless. I'm a co-founder and the COO. And I'm just going to take you through my presentation, which is Pockets of Wasted Energy. If Google existed in the 70s and you searched for this Janet Maingi, possibly these two photos would pop up. I was 6 months old, the perfect age for my parents to take me for the first photo shoot. I grew up in Nairobi, so I was born and raised in Nairobi. And the second photo is basically a photo of my family during one of our road trips to visit my grandparents in rural Kenya. Now, I'd like you to take a minute and look at these two photos. The one on your right is where my mother was born, raised, and where my grandparents lived until they got to their 90s. And the second photo is where my mother currently lives. And I'm sure there's a lot of discrepancies you can see. But the one thing that's common in both photos is they have no access to main grid electricity. So my mother's home is powered 100% by solar, so that she can still enjoy the fine things she got used to when living in Nairobi. And this is evident to show that whether it's a huge village, whether it's the United Kingdom or a small village in Malawi, we don't use all our energy that's available anywhere globally. There's what we call pockets of wasted energy, or you'd call it stranded energy. So what is being generated versus what is being distributed, there's a discrepancy. And those are the pockets of wasted energy. And here lies the opportunity. Now, if you look at the global distribution of Bitcoin mining, you can see the concentration is in Russia and North America. If you look at the rest of the world, there's a lot of potential for hash power. And so there lies the opportunity for many of us here today. And that's where the opportunity for Gridless came in. Not only are we decentralizing the Bitcoin network, but we are also using Bitcoin mining to catalyze electrification of rural Africa. Mining secures the Bitcoin network by using energy. It is the real proof of work, right? If you have heard of proof of work, we do it. So this is a proof of work. And why is mining important? First of all, Bitcoin mining is location agnostic. So it can be done anywhere from Texas to Nairobi, to Malawi, to Zambia, to Chad, to Russia, name the place. Bitcoin mining also encourages new energy generation to be built. It balances the power grid. And it secures the world only globally decentralized money asset, Bitcoin. So what does it look like? Whether you are doing it from Iceland, their warehouses, somewhere in Canada you might find they are containerized, cabinets like in Kenya, so that's one of our sites as Gridless, garages in Lebanon, and sheds in Nigeria. So Bitcoin mining is not sexy. It is not a sexy job, but it's a very fulfilling job. This is one of our sites out in Zambia. We're unpacking the miners. They traveled over 2,000 kilometers from Nairobi. So the site is very remote. If you took a flight, it will take you another 12 hours on road to access the site. Yeah, we enjoy being in Africa. This is another site in Kenya, running out of hydro. And again, I told you, it's not sexy, but we get the job done. You can see the slopey hills, And you can see the miners in the data center, but the areas are very remote because our focus is rural Africa. In Nairobi, in Kampala, you have access to the main grid, but we're focusing on these parts of Africa where electricity is still a myth. Just more photos about how unsexy this job is. So beyond just the mining, we also have to think about data connectivity. And so you can see photos of the team setting up Starlinks to be able to, for us to access data, because data is important when you're doing your Bitcoin mining. So this is one of our sites in Malawi. So the people who were here earlier this week and watched the Dirty Coin movie, this is the site that was being featured. So we are currently in Kenya, Tanzania, and Zambia. Sorry, Kenya, Malawi, and Zambia. Now, how does Bitcoin mining work? So I'll make it very simple. Yeah? Electricity comes in, gets into your miners or computers or servers, whatever name we want to call them. And then out of that, hashing happens. And once hashing happens, then a block is released. And on the other side, a lot of heat is released, which is, I guess, why we have that school of thought that Bitcoin is boiling the ocean. But I'm still looking for that ocean. And then, of course, at the end of the day, a new Bitcoin is released. So this happens every 10 minutes. So I talked about grid balancing, and this is an example of one of our sites where we do real-time demand response. Because, again, we always making sure that what we're doing does not affect the community. So the community demand takes priority, right? And you can see the different timings. And based on the demand, we respond to that demand. So the days, the timings they require less electricity, we then take up more electricity by powering on more miners. But come around 6 p.m. when people are back home, they need to cook, they need to watch television, kids need to do their assignments. We then shut down some of our machines to be able to ensure the community is getting enough power. So that's how we do the load balancing. Now, this is an example of one of our sites running on hydro, just to give a bit of an insight of how it works. You can see the water coming down the watershed. It goes through the intake, then there's the forebay, then it goes through the turbines. So where the turbines, once the turbines run, then electricity is generated, which then goes into the electrical load cabinet, and then it's distributed. So either to homes, to factories, and then finally to our Bitcoin data center. So this is an example of one of our sites running out of hydro, how the process works. We have other power sources we're using to mine Bitcoin. So we have geothermal. Being in Kenya, being in Africa, we of course enjoy the privileges of having the Rift Valley. So we have a lot of geothermal power. We have solar. Sorry. We have hydro. And of course we have biomass. So Mama Africa is really, really blessed with a lot of stranded energy. But it's really unfortunate that most of these communities still do not have access to electricity. And that's where Bitcoin mining is important for us. So allow me to be a bit delusional and use one of the sites that we have. When we partnered with with the site, their production was 46%. And you can see it here, right? Their usage was 10%. Their LCOE was 29 cents per kilowatt. Annual revenue was $77,000. Initial capex was 2.5 million. The IRR was 0%. And then we came into the relationship. Production was still 46%. Usage went to 100%. You can see the LCOE became better, 0.07%. Annual revenue moved up to $140,000. Initial capex, we added another 0.2 million just because of the mining infrastructure. And you can see the IRR changed. If we look at the future and decide, oh, we can actually help them expand this site, they move at production of 80%. Usage again is 100%. LCOE, see how beautiful this looks. Annual revenue, initial capex, 1.9 million, and the IRR becomes 17%. Let me spend some time on this slide. this has been very important because we have a lot of mini grids that exist in Africa. And most of these power plants are struggling just to keep afloat or to be able to provide electricity for their consumers. And I know Anita talked about one of our sites in Malawi, which is a very similar setup. So by partnering with these power plants, we've been able to create a three-way relationship. For us, Bitcoin mining, we're a profit-making company, so we're not doing charity, so we're making money. And then secondly, for the power plant producer, he's finally economizing power he was generating, the pockets of wasted energy. Every day he'll generate that power and it goes into thin air. And then thirdly, the consumers are able to get electricity, but not just electricity, it has become more affordable because by getting involved, you can see if this is a cost, that drop in cost, the same thing has been reflected on the consumer bills. So whether it's Nairobi or it's in Malawi, we've seen more homes getting connected because people can now afford to have electricity in their homes. And Bitcoin mining is important for energy disruption, structuring the prices. Because if you look at the current price in energy to mine Bitcoin was 0.12 cents, 12 cents. And then we can sell the energy to anyone at 13 cents, which completely changes the price dynamics. Because if we use Bitcoin as a benchmark on how much you can use to charge for electricity, that means you can get consumers to pay much cheaper prices. Instead of 20 cents, they can actually be paying at 13 cents. So we've seen that with Bitcoin coming into the relationship, consumers are getting value for their money. Now, energy is the base layer of human progress. I don't know about the developed world, but in Kenya, in Africa, we'll all talk about the basic needs: food, shelter, clothing. I think energy is part of that equation. Without energy, there can be no development in that environment. So just things that we've seen with the communities where we have partnered with the energy provider. Grades have become better. Let me paint a picture. Children in rural Africa go to school, they get assignments, and they come home. But they don't have electricity. So they'll huddle themselves over paraffin lamps, trying to keep up with the schoolwork that they need to go through. What are the repercussions of that? Health problems, because one, they're using very tiny paraffin lamps, which they're inhaling the paraffin fumes. Secondly, the lighting is poor, so there goes their eyesight, right? So you see a difference in this because apart from their grades getting better, their health improves. And beyond the communities we've connected, there's also health centers that have gotten to be connected that are closer to the communities because they're able to run their vaccination fridges for 24 hours, which means these children are getting better health care, and which means their survival rates in this world become better. And then security gets better. There's nothing as good as being able to walk in the streets of, rural Kenya, and you're not concerned about security because the lighting is perfect. And then overall, what happens then? Productivity goes up. So this is an example of our rural homes setup of electricity. So you can see the engineers trying to put up a meter and being able to give them lighting. And believe me, when you talk about electricity, we're not talking about I want to run a washing machine, I need to watch television. They just want a single bulb to light in their homes. That's how basic it is. And this is the same shop. After the installation was done, the shopkeeper was very excited because he said, oh, now instead of shutting down at 6 p.m., I can run my shop until 10 o'clock. More money for him. We're trying to build a 24-hour economy. Development comes in. So, Bitcoin mining continues to be more important to every of us. But for us in Africa, we have only one thing for it: go light up the world. Thank you.